This commercial right here has become one of the most iconic commercials in NBA history. And the reason for why it's so iconic is because of two words. What if? What if? A hypothetical. Something that will never happen, but you can't help but wonder what would happen if it did. Whether it be out of pure genuine curiosity, or it be as an argument in an age where there are people that make millions doing this for a living, not gonna act like I'm not one of them. It is a very interesting topic to cover, and a topic that has risen over the past couple of years, especially the last two because of these two players. What if Jordan played in today's NBA? Would he dominate without the rules of hand checking and softer defense, or would he crumble and be exposed as a guy who dominated inferior competition and would be rendered useless without a three-point shot? Or what if we brought back LeBron in the 90s? Would he be exposed for simply out-muscling an era with less physical defense, or would he dominate even more than Jordan with his amazing physical traits and advanced training? But this idea isn't just an idea that's exclusive to these two players. LeBron has heightened the GOAT conversation, and with the GOAT conversation comes the top 5 conversation, and with the top 5 conversation comes the top 10 conversation. And with that, we start to question how this guy,
Cousy, waiting for his man, bounce pass to Russell,
can be in any way, shape, or form better than this guy.
That's been going on all year with the Harden trade as Durant takes it all the way.
Or, you know what, even this guy.
ball, the lob, the jam! Oh, what a monster jam by Deandre Jordan!
And today we'll be tackling this conversation because I think this is a topic that needs to be talked about. Especially when these guys right here are going to be on your screen 24/7 from October to July. But I got some help today, and it is from your favorite NBA YouTuber's favorite NBA YouTuber, the man, NBA Storyteller.
Okay, so I'm not going to waste a bunch of time here and tell you how much I appreciate B-Souls and his channel, but I do, and I just did. So, as far as I can tell, we're doing this. We're settling once and for all the debate about eras. And I mean settling it. What's always bothered me is how there's really two ways to look at it, and we don't really separate them. And we need to. The two ways are as follow. Good old time travel. 2. The old-fashioned biological way. The boss here will look at it from a zapped right out of one dimension and plopped into another way, and I'll take it from the what if the Currys were a nice small town family living on a farm in the 1930s kind of way.
Alright, so like Storyteller said, there are two ways to look at it. Either we kidnap a millionaire athlete, plop them in a time machine, bring them either back in time or to 2018 for them to play basketball for our entertainment until we feel satisfied with the result. Which, now that I say it, sounds sadistic as hell. Or the biological way and assume that they were born a certain year so that their careers align with the players that we want them to play with. And Storyteller will cover that later on. But now let's focus on the former, the time machine. And let's start off with bringing someone back in time. Let's bring 25-year-old, the same guy who was top 3 in MVP voting last year, Anthony Davis, and plop him onto the 1965 NBA season. Now, mind you, Wilt was able to put up 30 points, 22 rebounds, 4 assists, and probably 8 blocks a game if they recorded it this year. Now, all things considered, take context and all-time great status away from it, AD is just a better scorer, and a more versatile scorer. He has the same or nearly the same rebounding capabilities, maybe not as good of a passer, but on the defensive end should be comparable. Anthony Davis would straight up dominate and would probably put up numbers like 35 points, 22 rebounds, 4 assists, 8 blocks, doing moves that people wouldn't even think was possible back then. And if he could carry a team to nearly 50 wins in 2018, I'm sure he could carry a team to 55 wins in 1965. To be honest, he would probably be considered the best player in the league. Now that we're done experimenting with AD, let's bring him back to 2018, along with 11-time champion and top 10 player of all time Bill Russell. And again, all things considered, no context provided. You just take 1965 Bill Russell and plop him onto the court in 2018, I'm seriously not sure if he'd be a top 10 player in the league. Now, I did do a video on the past on how Bill Russell would play in today's NBA, and I kind of came to the conclusion that he would be kind of like a Draymond Green type player with no shooting but better rim protection and a better rebounder, and I still stand by that to this day. Okay, now you might be saying, okay, B-Souls, that is so cringe to say, talking to myself in third person, oh my god. Okay, B-Souls, so if you agree that players of today would dominate older eras, and that players of older eras would not nearly be as good and as highly regarded in today's NBA, to the point where a 5-time MVP and an 11-time champion becomes barely a top 20 player, then doesn't that prove that accolades and achievements are overrated when, at its core, this guy is not a better basketball player than this guy? And again, what I'd say to you is you're thinking of it as in a vacuum, as if you're literally taking a guy, kidnapping him and putting him in a time machine and bringing him onto the court 40 years plus or minus from where they are right now. And that method right there is literally structured so that the players of today get the most benefit, while anyone who played like pre-2013 gets downgraded, which is so unfair. But we did talk about two methods, the time machine and the biological method, and this guy right here will explain the biological method.
What's up? Hey. Okay, of course, Bill, Wilt, I don't know, maybe even George Mikan. No, not him. Might have been good if they were born in the 1990s. I mean, these guys are freaks of nature. Freaks in any era. Really, just imagine Bill Russell on a LeBron James diet. Get the fuck out. But Bill and Wilt were not what made up the majority of the league, and that's where I want to explore. So we can really hone in on skill and style and what really makes a man the confident, creative player that they are. So now let's try this. Let's take these two guys, Bob Cousy and Steph Curry, and see what might happen if they were born in a different time. Bob. Let's talk about Bob. Robert Cousy, known for his Celtics days and being a real team player, I guess, a true winner, one of the NBA's top 50 all time. He was even the NBA MVP in 1957. Something I've noticed about his game, something we've all noticed, what makes him an interesting candidate for this experience is this clip. Yep, this single clip. Sure, it looks wonky, and boy, he's showing his right hand dominance, but what's clear to me is that he wanted the ball. He really believed he could out-dribble a whole damn team. And not just believe, he did. He can dribble low, shifty, can maneuver through tons of people. He's clearly at the forefront of dribbling in the 50s. And for that to happen, through his whole life he had to stay ahead of the competition. And that's not an era thing, that's a timeless thing, that's a human thing. You can take that will and focus and apply that to any brand spanking new baby. But instead of these drills, he'd be doing these ones. So where does a guy like this go in modern times? Well, maybe there's a perfect place for a snazzy dribbler to display his talents. So let's play it out. Bob Cousy, born in New York City, son of poor French immigrants. But this time, it's 1984. That is interesting already. And as a kid of the 90s, he buys every basketball VHS available. Spends hours watching Come Fly With Me and Dr. J's dribbling techniques. Now he plays for his local high school, always staying one step ahead in ability and speed. But unfortunately, as some of his competition continued to grow and excel, Bob doesn't. Completely maxes out at around 6 feet, just about his dad's height. But we know Bob. He's quiet in the classroom, but brash on the hardwood. He continues to play and experiment. But unfortunately, at that time, nobody recognized what he could do with the ball as something you could utilize in the college game. And he received 0 offers for college, 0 scholarships. Bob's now in a tough spot. Coming from a poor background and having no scholarships, he must face reality and get a job at the restaurant his pop runs in Yorksville or pursue this basketball dream. So Bob splits his time between hooping and bussing. But he was never more than a few feet away from his basketball. And one day, walking down the street towards the family restaurant, he notices a flyer on a telephone pole, I suppose, announcing the new phenomenon known as the And One Mixtape Tour, coming to his town. So you know what Bob did? Bob grabbed his ugly ass Sam Cassell shoes and showed up to the tryout and dazzled the crap out of him. I'll spare you the rest here. Yeah, basically he becomes the professor. Look him up. But that's not a shot at Bob. It's just a different path. Sure, maybe he would have got a 10-day contract and became Steve Nash. But see, Steve was able to focus on hoops almost exclusively. Bob couldn't. In our scenario, he spent half his week elbow deep in uneaten carp. Bob, with some flashy passes and superior skill in the 50s, see, that was enough. It was enough to get him a chance. Red Auerbach even said himself, Bob wasn't really that great until he got to the pros.
But on a pro level, you couldn't project how good he was going to be.
See, nobody expected him to be what he was until he was years deep into the NBA. And it wasn't until Bill the Freak Russell showed up to make him a champ. Again, he got the chance, But now millions of super talented folks today don't even get that. And sure, maybe he would have been Jason Williams or Rafer Alston, but note here, neither one of them ended as an all-time great either. See, in our modern era, unless it comes in a 6'5" package or more, it usually means a life of proving people wrong and doing it the hard way. And it's a little less coronation-y, the way Bob had it in the 50s. But you know what? He did great for his time, in the 50s. And he was out there laying the groundwork for more pioneers in skill and specialty like our next subject. Okay, this one's better. Basically, basketball is really only 4 things: physical ability, discipline, creativity, and confidence. And then there's luck and who your parents are and access to opportunity, but we're not counting those today. And after following a guy like Bob, who maybe had 3 out of 4, let's talk about another 3 out of 4 guy. Oof, Steph Curry. Let's get his story in order. In a small Carolina town, Delphius and Tenarius Curry are the proprietors of a chicken farm, when in 1930 they welcomed Wardelius Stephelius Curry into the world. And let's go ahead and just get the obvious out of the way. Being such a fair-skinned family, it did make living in the 30s in a Carolina town just a shade easier. But it remained that they must keep their head down and continue to produce healthy chickens for the town that kept problems out of their front yard. But one day, after young Stephelius discovers he had an ability to shoot the basket through a peach basket from nearly half past the pasture past the pig's pen with incredible accuracy. And unbeknownst to his parents, he decided it was time to show his newly refined skill in school. And being in the little odd progressive pocket of town, and obviously because of his dad's standing and goodwill in the town, they allowed young Stephen Curry to try out for the freshman team, an otherwise all-white team. But unfortunately, in the season opener, he decided to lead with his confidence instead of his cautiousness, and he brazenly picked the wrong target to unveil his new talent. Just a few minutes into the game, he eyes his target and pulls up to shoot right over an outstretched arm of a young strapping lad named Jebby. Yes, that Jebby. The town's sheriff, Joe Lindstrom's youngest boy Jebby. And as that leather strap ball clunked its way through the warped wood, the crowd went silent. And there were only 2 noises emanating from that small Charlotte gymnasium lunchroom community courthouse. One was the oblivious shuffling of the feet from the young Wardelius Curry as he jitterbugged and pointed to the sky. The second noise was the cocked gun from the side of Sheriff Joe Lindstrom. See, other than physical ability, I think confidence is the most important through trait here. And what Bob and Steph have is pure confidence. But as we saw in the case of young Wardelius, confidence in the wrong place in the wrong time doesn't always look the same. And as we saw in the case of Bob, confidence and ability sometimes just doesn't get you there when you need a little bit more freak in you. And on that, as we've seen, sometimes confidence scares people. With the creation of the Harlem Globetrotters and even the later players who populated the ABA, confidence, style, and creativity in the wrong packaging and wrong human is seen as a threat. And it had to be separated apparently in order to hang on to the purity of professional basketball. And the ones that may have shown us that talent and ability can be timeless, well, maybe they never really got their chance in the 40s, the 50s, and the 60s. Maybe the reason we believe that players of those eras could never hang with the players from today is because, well, we're just not looking at the right players. I don't know, maybe I'm just talking shit here. The difference is today, if you have that, if you have the ability anywhere on this earth, you can get noticed. If you want to get noticed, you can get noticed. And there's a chance that you can take your talents to the highest stage. Back then, a lot of people who could have made it and could have been seen as viable athletes today never had their chance. But what is true from today all the way back to that beginning of time, freaks will be freaks. And if you are a 6'10" human that is not full of cancerous tumors or deficiencies and enlarged glands, you are a freak of nature, and you can make it at any time.
If y'all aren't subbed to this guy's channel, what the hell are you doing? Oh my god. So this is a topic that I covered in my video about Zion last week, and how if 6'6", 282 pound, nearly 40-inch vertical Charles Barkley was born in the same year as Zion, how he would adapt to the current game similar to how Zion has and will adapt to today's NBA. And this is the main reason why this idea that all-time lists should be based off of skill and that accolades are stupid is in itself stupid. Because what you're doing is literally penalizing someone for being the innovators, the front runners, the trendsetters. You're not taking into account the significance of someone's actions. When you're talking about the greatest iPhone ever, you don't immediately go to the iPhone X with its Face ID and the fastest performance. You think of the iPhone 4 and even the iPhone 6 because of the groundwork that it laid down for future iPhones. When you think of the best 2K, you don't think of 2K18 simply because of its superior graphics and objectively better gameplay from every other 2K prior to it. You think of 2K11 or 2K13 because of what it brought to the table for its time and the groundwork that it laid down for future titles. But now that we're talking about sports, now that we're talking about the NBA, that logic is kind of just thrown out the window for some reason. Aside from that, you're not taking into consideration how they would adjust to certain eras and how they would take advantage of the resources of its era. To act like a guy like Wilt Chamberlain or Bill Russell would be so stupid and so dumb, to the point where they can't see the trajectory that the league is going in, which is more shooting and agility, when for their time they created basic concepts and principles that players subconsciously use today, is just ridiculous. You got guys like Brook Lopez and Al Horford learning how to be a respectable three-point shooter in like one off-season, but apparently two guys with some of the greatest work ethic we've ever seen and the greatest intangibles we've ever seen, they just can't survive in today's NBA. What? Now, not all players do end up translating well, like Bob Cousy, as Storyteller pointed out. He's not going to be the best point guard in the league just like he was in the 50s, even with the skill set and even with today's advancements, because he simply isn't as athletically gifted as a Bill Russell or an Oscar Robertson or an Elgin Baylor. He still probably won't make the league. But the reason why he's on our all-time list is again for what he did for his time and the groundwork that he laid down for future generations. Before Cousy, there really was no flash in the game, and he brought that. An integral part of the league that has made it such a beloved league around the world, he brought that to the game. Now, bringing current players back in time does mean that they would have a lack of resources instead, as Storyteller pointed out in the Steph and Curry scenario, meaning that they would be lesser players than what they are right now. And it would be dumb to lessen someone's all-time ranking because of this. And what I'm about to say is kind of the overarching message of this video, and that is when push comes to shove, everything does go back to achievements, especially winning championships. Because it doesn't matter what time it is, either we're talking about the present, the past, or the future, the objective of basketball and the objective of any sport in general is to win. And this is an aspect of the game that will transcend time. Now again, there has to be applied context to it. Not all championships are created equal. Certain scenarios do prevent certain players from winning championships, and certain players are granted more opportunities to win a championship than others, and statistical dominance has to be some sort of factor as well, which is why even as I say this, Bill Russell is still not in my top 3 when, by my logic, he should be the best ever. But when I say winning, this doesn't even mean exclusively just winning championships. It could be like what LeBron James, Jason Kidd, and Steve Nash has done, turning franchises around and making them title contenders, and the majority of that has to do with their play. It could be what Harden and Westbrook were doing, leading their team to overachieving records, at least in the regular season. But speaking of Westbrook and Harden as well, it could also pertain to a lack of winning as to why a player that might be less skilled is ranked higher than him simply because although he is less skilled, he is using his skills to aid the team's success more than the player who is individually more versatile. This is most likely the fairest way, albeit having its flaws, where we don't discredit a guy for being born in the 40s, while at the same time not discrediting the skill of players of today, and that is by measuring a player's greatness with their achievements and accolades. And if you still don't agree with me, let me end this video with this question. Despite me and you most likely disagreeing with both of the scenarios I'm about to say, which list do you think is better? A list where Bill Russell is ahead of LeBron James, or a list where Kyle Lowry is ahead of Jerry West? Alright, huge thank you to NBA Storyteller for helping me out with this video. God. Huge thanks to NBA Storyteller for helping me out with this video. To me, he is definitely the most talented NBA YouTuber out there. And the fact that he's making like short film caliber videos for YouTube. His last video was like a 40-minute film. I don't even want to call it a video. It was a film. Yeah, he doesn't really get the recognition he deserves because the algorithm likes, more frequent uploads, and he uploads like once every week or every 2 weeks because he spends so much time on his content. I just think it's so unfair to him. So go ahead and subscribe to his channel. There's gonna be an end card at the end of this video, and also the link to his channel will be in the description. And while you're at it, go ahead and leave a like on this video and subscribe, because this will probably end up being one of the longest videos I've done on this channel. I think it's gonna be like 15 or 20 minutes long. But with that being said, I hope y'all enjoyed this video. Again, subscribe to Storyteller, link in the description, and I'm out. Peace.